to the Cut Through podcast. I'm Simon Bohr, and this is how to communicate with clarity in a noisy world. Welcome to Cut Through. This week, I want to look at communications strategy, and specifically, I want to look at 5 bad communication strategies and why they're more common than good strategy. Shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine, when I was leading UK government communications, I had a conversation with a senior official at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. I don't think we're clear on our strategy, I said. Who do we really need to reach with our communications, and what are we trying to get them to do differently? I'm completely clear, he snapped. We need to communicate to the public in the UK so that they understand why we're supporting Ukraine. We need to communicate to allies in Europe and the US so they maintain their support. We need to counter Russian disinformation, especially in the global south. We need to dissuade Russia's allies from coming to her aid. We need to maintain morale inside Ukraine. And we need to expose to the Russian people the truth of what Putin is doing in their name. Most people seem not to understand strategy. The description above might have been an accurate articulation of what was desirable, but a strategy is the opposite of wishful thinking. Strategy, by necessity, involves choice. It is about considering the different possible ways in which you could achieve your objectives and picking one course of action over another. Over the last 25 years, working in communications, I've seen the same strategy mistakes repeated again and again. Sometimes a strategy is presented as simply a list of activities that the organization is planning to undertake. This might be a plan, but it doesn't necessitate a strategic choice at all. Sometimes a strategy is wishful thinking. For example, our strategy is to deliver the best customer communications in the UK. To be a strategy, it really needs to say something of how you are going to achieve your goals. And sometimes the word strategy is added to activities or to roles to confer importance. So rather than having a communications plan, people have a strategic communications plan, and they practice strategic communications. But of course, all good communication should be in support of strategic goals. So here are my top 5 common mistakes to avoid when developing a communications strategy. Number 1, the everything, everywhere, all at once strategy. I recently asked a candidate for a senior communications job what their social media platform strategy would be for the organization. Well, I think you have to be everywhere. You need to be on all of them, don't you? It will always feel easier in the short term to keep routes open. By doing everything, you can tell yourself you'll be better able to react in the moment. And besides, perhaps your boss expects you to be everywhere. But long term, this is a route to guaranteed failure. In a world of limited time, budget, and audience attention, it's critical to choose if you want to succeed. Your strategy must choose what you won't do as much as choose what you will do. If your strategy does not force you to make trade-offs, then it won't work as well as an effective strategy. And a good strategy makes it more likely that you will achieve your objective than a competitor who has not made the choice. For example, one country's tourism strategy might be to attract low numbers of high net worth tourists, while another country might target larger numbers of lower income tourists. Deciding that you're going to sell to a small number of people at a high margin rather than to sell to a large number of people at a low margin is a strategic choice. Both are a legitimate course of action, both could be successful, but by making a strategic choice, you are sacrificing the option of doing one thing over another. You are choosing a way of achieving your objective, in this case, growing tourism income, so that you can marshal the resources at your disposal in a coherent way. Strategy is about identifying the different possible approaches to achieving success and then selecting one. 2. The self-obsessed strategy. If you have already decided what you're going to do, then you are not developing a strategy. You are simply retrofitting self-justification. The purpose of a communication strategy is to get an audience to think, feel, or do something differently. And in order to do that, you need to know something of your audience. So a strategy developed without audience insight is highly unlikely to be successful, and it certainly won't be as successful as one that is based on deep audience understanding. Your strategy should absolutely start from your objectives, the outcomes that you want, but it shouldn't necessarily be based on what you think you want to say. The whole purpose of developing a strategy is to work out the most effective way of using communications to get to your desired outcome. There are lots of things that you can control, but how people think and are likely to respond to your actions is not one of them. So you need to understand your audience before making your strategic choices. You need to be prepared to test your original hypothesis and be open to the fact that the route that you thought best at the outset may not in reality be the most effective strategic choice. So set your objectives, collect the evidence and insight, work out what it is telling you, and then decide what to do, not the other way round. 3. The platitudinous truisms strategy. If your strategy is framed around meaningless phrases, we're going to communicate a clear and robust plan. We're going to enable faster delivery. We're going to unblock pace, innovation, and ambition. Then you do not have a strategy. The opposite of your strategy should be a legitimate course of action. Yet no one would ever say that their intention was to communicate an unclear and weak plan. These types of strategies avoid difficult choices through clever drafting. They sound dramatic and dynamic and action-oriented, but they're a paper tiger. They are easy to agree because people can read whatever they want into them, but they're totally ineffectual as a strategy. Strategy should explain the how as precisely as possible. For a strategy to be meaningful, it generally involves not doing something else, and that should almost certainly feel painful and probably provoke disagreement. Don't be tempted to minimize the disagreement by being unclear about the choice. It is much better to have difficult conversations in setting a tightly defined strategy than to put resources into a strategy that is unclear. Clarity of strategy aligns your team. When your whole organization understands not just what you are doing, but why, people make better decisions. They can stay on message. They spot opportunities in the moment that will align with the plan. They've got the flexibility to be creative because they know where the boundaries for action are. At its core, strategy is about coherence. It is the art of getting everyone and everything to point in the same direction. And you simply can't deliver that through woolly phrasing or thinking. Number 4, the shooting for the moon without a rocket strategy. Ambition is great, but shooting for the moon when you don't have a rocket is just setting yourself up to fail. Your objective should be realistic and it should be attainable. Now, that's not the same thing as it being easy. The objective should be stretching and challenging. You might not even know how you're going to achieve it, but it must be possible. Number 5, the Christmas tree strategy. So you've made your strategic choice. You have your plan, and what's more, it's working. Everybody can see the results are heading in the right direction. So what happens? Well, people start saying, hey, if this is working for X, then let's ask the team to do Y as well. In fact, let's ask them to do this also. And suddenly, like a Christmas tree, the more baubles that you add to the branches, the more the strain shows, until eventually the whole thing comes crashing down. Suddenly, you have turned what was a good strategy right back into the everything, everywhere, all at once strategy. Good strategy bridges the gap between ambition and action. Your strategic capacity is a combination of the resources you have available to you and your audience's capacity to absorb information. If either of those two things is overwhelmed, then you're killing your chance of securing your outcome. If there is more to do, and there always is, you are much better going fast and hard on fewer objectives, achieving them, and then moving on to the next set rather than taking on too many things at the same time. This isn't a lack of ambition, it is a dose of reality. It is you marshalling the resources that are available to you in the most effective way possible. In the coming weeks, I'll explore what good strategy looks like. What are the winning new strategies that are working for organizations in this low trust, high change communications environment? What are the timeless strategies that have always worked and still retain their value today? And what are the techniques that you can use that will help you to develop a great strategy? Until then, remember that strategy is fundamentally about choice. It is about choosing how to get from where you are now to where you want to be with the resources you have available. Let me know strategy mistakes that you have seen and any examples of good communication strategy that you think I should cover in future articles. Until then, please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and please share this with other communicators who want to lead with clarity and cut through the noise. Otherwise, thanks for watching, reading, or listening, and see you next time.